Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today I'm going to be giving you a few tips on how to read more. So my reading or my upload schedule for the month of September and the month of October have kind of been like basically tossed around a bunch. I had a video that I was planning on doing way earlier in the month and I actually started working on in August. That kind of fell through, so I don't know if it's going to get uploaded at all anymore. But I still have all the footage, so maybe if I decide to make it, I will. I don't know. And then I came up with a reading challenge for October, which you don't know about yet, but you'll hear about on Sunday, I think. Anyways, everything's going really crazy over here, but I decided to film this video so I can pop it up for you guys, because I feel like you've been getting a lot of beauty content on my channel, which isn't really what I'm trying to focus on. I'm trying to do a more even split, but I have like a bunch of, all of the beauty videos that you're going to see for the next like 2 months have been pre-filmed. So just in case you were curious about how that's going. But yeah, let's get into this video. So I've been asked by people, not really on BookTube, but people in my real life, how I managed to read so much. If you don't know, I am a full-time law student. So I read a lot for school, and then I read a lot for BookTube for fun as well. I don't know, I just thought I would share some of the tips on how I've been able to read more and more books. This year so far, I have read 69 books. I believe that's correct. Well, 66, and then I'm in the middle of 3 books at the moment. But by the end of this month, it should be 72 or 71, depending on what I get to. But I didn't read a single book before April of this year. I used to read a lot when I was a kid. This is just like backstory. I'll have timestamps down below in case you don't want to listen to me ramble about my life. But I read a lot when I was a kid, and then I sort of stopped reading as much when I was in high school, and I had to read a lot more for school. And then same thing in college. I didn't really read very much. I would read an occasional book during the summer and, you know, a book here or there, but I wasn't like really invested in reading as much anymore. And then in 2018, the end of 2018, I got a library card up here, which seems ridiculous because I've lived here since 2014. So it took me almost 5 years to get a library card, but I went and got a library card and I started getting books from the library again and started really enjoying reading again. And then in 2019, I made a goal to read 1 book a week and totally failed between starting law school and working full-time and then going to school full-time. I just didn't really make the time for reading. It wasn't as much of a priority to me. So I think I read like 30-something books that year. But now, this year, I really sat down and decided that reading was going to become a priority. Also, everything is closed, which helps. So, I don't know about where you live, where I live. Things are opening back up again, but case numbers are still really, really high. So I'm still not really going out. I haven't been to a bar or restaurant since March, probably, maybe even February. I don't know if I went out to eat in the first 2 weeks of March before everything shut down. No, I did. I definitely did. I have a distinct memory of going out one day in March, right before all this happened. So I still haven't really gone out to eat or anything. We've just been hanging out at home a lot, doing things outdoors a lot as much as we can, and we being me and my boyfriend, who I live with. So, but I did just want to share what I've been doing to read more that I think can be applied to situations outside of quarantine and, you know, the chaotic times that are 2020. So my first tip is to read in different mediums. And this might seem like, I don't know, hard for some people, but I, at all times pretty much, will have at least a physical or ebook, as well as an audiobook. And I like to listen to audiobooks when I'm doing housework around the house, when I'm walking my dogs, when I'm, you know, if I drive anywhere that takes more than like 10 minutes and I'm by myself, I'll usually listen to an audiobook. I get them for free from my library. We have resources. Like my library uses Cloud Library and Overdrive. So those are the 2 sources. You can also use Scribd. I'm going to kick my dogs out. Hang on 1 second. They are driving me crazy today. But listening to audiobooks is one way that I find really, really helps me get through books a lot faster and helps me read more books, because you can listen to an audiobook while you read the book physically, but you can also just have like easy to listen to books. And so I find that very, very helpful. I also like having ebooks so you don't have to bring a book with you. This is especially going to be helpful for people who are back at work. When I was interning this summer, I went into the office a few days a week, and it was nice to just have a book on my phone as an ebook that I could flip through on my lunch break. Having multiple mediums helps a lot with getting through books faster. You're able to read more because you're able to read more. hold on. You're able to read more pages and more books because you're allowing yourself more time to read with that kind of flexibility, if that makes any sense. My second tip is to read multiple books at one time. And this used to seem like a really foreign, hard concept for me. Like I wanted to pick up a book and then read it and then finish it and return it. I didn't want to have a bunch of books going at once because I thought that would be confusing. And it can be, I think, probably if you're reading multiple books of one genre, and especially if you're reading books that you're not really into. So I feel like if you're not enjoying a book, you won't remember the characters' names, you won't really remember what's happening. And that's a different tip, but I would be enough a book if I was going to be confused if I picked up another book. But for me, having multiple books at once, I usually like to have like right now I'm reading a sci-fi and a historical fiction, and then I just started a young adult fantasy. So I have 3 books going, but none of them are at all the same, like at all. So that's really helpful for me, is to read multiple books at once, because like say you're reading a book that's like really dense, like a classic or something that's like takes a lot of time to get through. You can read a chapter or 2 here and there, but maybe you want to just pick up something light and fluffy that's fun and quick to get through to like fill in the gaps. And so that way you're not like burning yourself out on a book that you really want to read but is more challenging. You're able to read more, and I feel like you're able to read a wider variety of things when you do that. My third tip is to schedule your reading time in. So this is especially helpful, like I said, if you're working full time or you're a student or something like that. If you schedule time, and that can be as much time or as little time as you have. So like I said, if you're working full time and you're going into the office, or even if you're working at home, if you get like a lunch break, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour or whatever it is, or a dinner break, depending on where you're working, or a breakfast break. I don't really know how things that are open early in the morning work, but I digress. If you use your break time to read, and that's why it's really it can be really helpful to have ebooks on your phone, or to bring like a smaller physical book if you have that. If you don't mind bringing like a 1,000-page book, then I mean, go for it, bring Malaban. But like for me, it's more realistic to just bring my phone and have something to scroll through. Also, if you have like I am doing school full time at home right now. All of my classes are online, which is kind of a pain, but it means that I have like gaps in my day where I'm just at my house, so I can just read for my morning class and then take a break, and when I'm eating lunch and I have like an hour and a half in between when I need to start reading for my afternoon class, I can read a book, or listen to an audiobook and do some chores. Just stuff like that is really, really helpful, just setting up time to read, which seems so like obvious, like yes, if you make time for something, you can do it. But I think like intentionally setting that time is really important. And that kind of ties in with the fourth tip that I was going to give you, which is to plan ahead. So if you know that you're going to have a really busy week, planning in your time to read is really important. But also like at the beginning of every month, if you're watching this, I assume you've seen other booktube videos, people do, and myself included, do like TBR games or TBRs. So you don't have to play a game. You don't have to pick 12 books that you want to read this month or leave it up to chance like some people do. But you can just like look at the books that you have, look at the books. Maybe if you have like a list of things, like I have a list on my computer of books that I'm interested in reading, go through and pick out a couple that you want to read and like prioritize those books and actually like make a plan to get them. If you already own them, like figure out, like say you want to read East of Eden, which is 601 pages, or at least my copy is, I just finished it. But say you want to read that, divide it up into like, if you want to read it in a week, divide it up into 7 equal sections, equal about, and then like put sticky notes in between. This is something that I've started doing. I think I saw it from Jade from JD Ray Reads. JD Ray Reads does this. And then other people probably do it too, but you can just like, that's like a visual that you can see. This is how much I need to get through to be on top of where I need to be. And for me, I often will like find that I get ahead of that, and then I'm like, oh great, I'll just read more for tomorrow, and then I'll just get so far ahead of it that I'll finish it in 5 days instead of 7, or whatever the case may be. But also sometimes you don't get to read as much, so you just try to catch up, and like that's okay. The other thing I would say about setting goals is try to make sure your goals are achievable, but also maybe undershoot a little bit. And I don't know if this is like I don't know how to word this to make it sound like less bad, but like if you set too high and lofty of goals, you're just going to be disappointed in yourself because you're kind of setting yourself up to fail. Whereas you can build confidence in yourself if you set lower goals and more achievable goals. So like, you don't have to set a goal to read 30 books in a month if last month you read 2 books. Your goal can just be to read 2 books, read a book every other week, or 1,000 pages, or whatever your goal is. You have to individually find out like what's realistic for you, and that should be what you aim for. My 5th tip is that it's okay to DNF a book. And I know some people really have a problem with it, and I used to as well. I used to just finish things to the very bitter end, but if you're not enjoying something, put it down. Because you'll be able to read so much more when you're enjoying what you're reading. And there are times, I'll admit, that you're not in the mood to, there are times that I'm not in the mood to read anything, regardless of what it is. So I'll play Sims 4 for a week instead of read. Or I'll just like binge watch some trashy movies, or like, I don't know, take a bath, do a face mask, do something else, like listen to a podcast instead. Like, there are times when I am in the mood to do other things besides read, a lot of times. But I find that if I'm reading something and I'm not enjoying it, if I take a break from that book, and I'm not saying you have to put it down forever. There are books, if you hate a book, don't finish it. And those are the books that are easier for me to DNF, but like, books that I want to read, like I put down East of Eden for almost 3 weeks because I started it during Tome Topple, was not in the mood to read it, and then decided to just quit Tome Topple partway through after, I think I read 2 or 3 books for it. But I set East of Eden down. I read like 4 or 5 books in between starting East of Eden and finishing it, maybe even more than that. But I just like was not in the mood for that story, and it was such a good book, so I'm so glad that I waited until I was in a better place to read it, because I was able to enjoy it a lot more than I would have if I'd forced myself through it. My number one thing with reading is that for me, reading is supposed to be fun. Reading is something that I enjoy. I read because I like to get different perspectives, learn things, and see the world through different people's eyes. And if you're not enjoying a story that you're choosing to put yourself in, why be there? Like, there are so many things in your real life that you can't choose that you just sort of have to sit through. Like, why put yourself through that when you could literally just pick a different book? So that would be my 5th tip. Don't be afraid to put something down if you're not enjoying it. Life is too short to force yourself to finish a book that you don't care about. Okay, those are the 5 tips that I have for how to read more. Well, I guess I have a bonus tip that kind of is implied with all of these things, but like, get a library card. Because a big deterrent for me for years for reading was that I don't mind buying books, I don't mind accumulating things, but the older I get, the less I want just a bunch of clutter. And the older I get, the more I'm like, if there's not a place for something, I don't want it. And so I've stopped thrifting as much as I used to. I've stopped buying as much makeup. I've stopped buying as much books. As many books. But I don't buy nail polish anymore. There's so much stuff that I just like don't really need to have. And I'm trying not to buy as much of it. Or just like even have as much. I'm trying to donate more. But where was I going with that? Oh, so if the reason you don't read as much, or one of the reasons you feel you don't read as much, is because you don't own as many books, or you don't own books that you haven't read yet, and you don't really feel like buying new books or accumulating new stuff. Maybe you don't have the space for it. Maybe you don't have the money for it. Like, whatever the case may be, there are a lot of online resources for ebooks and stuff, first of all. And second of all, get a library card. Go to your local library, get a library card. If your library is closed right now, you can apply for a card online. Most places they'll give it to you. I don't know about every place, but I live in Arkansas, and you can get a library card online, no problem. And you can go use the online resources like I was talking about. I don't pay for any of my ebooks or audiobooks. I just use my library. And I use my library for physical books sometimes too. It's harder right now because you can't really browse around, so you have to just like reserve it online and then call when you're ready to pick it up. But I just think libraries are such underused resources. And I remember I used to work with a girl who was like, gosh, I wish there was like a service where you could pay like $10 a month or $5 a month and you can get whatever book you want, like however many books you want, just sent to you to borrow. And I was like, well, there's a service that does it for free, and it's called the library. And if they don't have a book that you want, you literally send in a request, and they'll look for it in local branches and get it for you, or they'll buy it if you request it enough times. So, like, the library is such an underutilized resource, and I don't think people really understand that. But get a library card. That's my, like, biggest piece of advice. You don't need to buy a bunch of books. You don't need to do it. Also, if you're not sure what you like, libraries are great for that too. If you haven't read since you were a teenager and you used to read John Green, and now you're like 25, try like an adult contemporary. And maybe if that's not your thing, Pick up another YA contemporary, because I still like YA contemporary a little bit more than adult contemporary, I'll admit. If you think you might be in the mood for science fiction, pick up a sci-fi book. I never liked sci-fi as a kid, but now I'm like really into it. So you never know what you're gonna like. Just try out a bunch of stuff. And always check out booktubers' recommendations, check out online recommendations, look at sources like Goodreads and Amazon reviews. I don't know. I think reading is so fun and so important, and you can get so much out of it, so much more than what you used to think you could. It's not all Charles Dickens and Jane Austen. There's a whole world out there. I just think it's really important to read, and I hope that these tips help you. But that is going to be it for today's video. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you would like to, you can subscribe down below. I post 2 videos every single week on Sundays and Thursdays about books and beauty. And that's going to be it for me today. What else was I going to say? I need to get like a better outro because I suck at this. But yeah, I do hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below what you do to read more, or if any of these tips you hadn't heard before and you're going to try. I would love to know. I'm going to go. And I will see you on Sunday.